What we are going to do is Steve's going to give an update and also take questions and answers on grants, and also really kind of grant opportunities. And it's very kind of opportune, really, with Woodfield's East money still available to support the infrastructure that goes along with Woodfield.
Thanks, Gary. This is the bit I was actually booked to speak about. And the reason there is no PowerPoint is because I hadn't had time to put one together, but I think you'll all be pleased because of that. We're all PowerPointed out, I suspect. Justin's talk was notable in the fact that the words impressive and McDonald's were in the same sentence, and you don't hear that every day. A couple of quick personnel changes to tell you about in terms of the Forestry Commission team. Neil Jarvis was promoted earlier in the year as one of our field managers, as his predecessor, Andrew Hoppett, went off to sort out oak processionary moth in London. Good luck with that, Andrew. Although we filled that post on a permanent basis with Sid Cooper from Woodfield East, I wouldn't let Sid go from Woodfield East. So Ben Hogben has kindly stepped in for a year. Many of you will know Ben from his Norfolk County Council days and from the training days with the European funding, and that was called Land Skills East. Thank you, Ben. I've also got Justin Hardy, who's currently doing some lecturing at Otley, to step in 3 days a week while Anita Stone is on maternity leave. He's covering sort of bits of Hertfordshire and Essex and Cambridgeshire. The last one to tell you about is Anne Embry. Do you want to wave, Anne? Stand up, because nobody can see you. Anne's going to work 3 days a week on answering queries about Callara over and above what Woodland officers can deal with. We've had hundreds of inquiries, obviously, and I think there's a customer care issue that we need to work on there. And Anne has kind of lots of experience of front of house stuff, as well as having a background in conservation management, so that's great. The thing I was booked to talk about was grants, and we're in one of those interesting periods with our grant packages in that the European money in this current round is about to run out, and the new one will seamlessly take over about 2 years after the last one. This happens every time, and so if you've been around for any time, you won't be surprised by that. It's always the case, but never more so now. If you're interested in any grants to do something, do it now. Don't wait even until next year would be my advice, because you might find it doesn't exist for a while. I'm going to get Edwin to come up in a minute to talk about the Woodfield East grants, because we really are at the last chance saloon with those. But just to give you a rundown, the suite of planning and assessment grants, the woodland improvement grants, restocking management grants particularly, they will be available, we think, until probably May of next year. And then probably most of them, other than the planning grants, will probably stop for a period yet to be decided. But if you wanted me to take an educated punt, I wouldn't have thought we'll take applications until probably early to mid 2014. So, as I say, if you're interested in any of those grants, take advantage now. The woodland creation grants are a bit more interesting in that we think they're likely to go ahead to go on longer, because the government's quite keen on getting in more woodland creation, as we've heard. And you will notice that we've increased the grant significantly. So basically, per hectare, you get £1,000 more across the board now for all planting grants. And on top of that, you can get another £2,000 for the usual sorts of benefits around biodiversity, etc., with one big addition, and that's around meeting Water Framework Directive benefits. And in effect, it's an ecosystem services payment for doing things for water, whether that's to do with flooding or water quality. So that ties in nicely with what Tony was talking about earlier on. It's not too difficult if you're in the right zoning area, and you have to look at the website for the maps for that, to actually get that extra £2,000 if you change the design of your planting somewhat to work with the water thing. So that's well worth looking at. Two other things quickly to say about one about woodland creation, and then about prioritisation of our work post-Kalara, if we are in a post-Kalara situation. I can't think of a native woodland planting scheme in the last 15 years that hasn't included ash. Many of you are reflecting on that for this season. If you want to change ash in an existing scheme or a scheme that you're about to put in, then you can do that simply by an exchange of email with the girls in the admin hub. You don't have to go through a formal assessment with the woodland officer. Don't bother them with that. Just say, I want to plant this in place of that. Get it as an exchange of letters or emails, and we can make that happen. Okay, the last thing I was going to say before handing over to Edwin to give you an update on the Wood Fuel East grants is that obviously we've created a backlog of grants and licenses because my team has been doing nothing other than Kalara stuff for the last 3 weeks. And it will take a bit of time to sort that through, so please have patience with us. I've told the guys to prioritise 3 things. Woodland creation grant schemes. Obviously, you're wanting to get the trees in the ground this year. And that is particularly important because you must, if you want to get the farm woodland payments, the annual payments, they will disappear in the next round of the European funding. So you must get the trees in, you must get a scheme approved, the trees in the ground, a claim put in, and the grant paid by December of 2013, next year, in order to benefit from those annual 15-year payments. So there's real incentive if you ever wanted one to get woodland creation in. So that's the first thing we'll prioritise. The second thing is felling licences, so we can keep businesses trundling through. And the nuance there is if you've got a felling licence attached to a woodland improvement grant application, you might want to talk to the woodland officer about separating that out to bung it through as a felling licence, because we can do that quicker than we can think about the woodland improvement grant elements. And the third thing that we'll prioritise are claims, you'll be pleased to hear. So those are the 3 things we'll prioritise: creation, felling licences and claims. If it's not in that list, we will get round to it, but not within the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think that's all I wanted to say. Edwin, do you want to take questions together when? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Edwin, do come up. Edwin will now speak to you in Dutch.
Goedemiddag allemaal. I was asked to say a little bit about Wood Fuel East. I don't think I have to explain what Wood Fuel East is about anymore, because it's been advertised over the last few years. We've been running since 2008. We are funded under the Rural Development Programme, initially through the East of England Development Agency, now directly through DEFRA, and our final claim needs to be with DEFRA on the 10th of, by the middle of October next year. So we are backdating all our steps that we need to do, which comes down to the fact that we now need final concept applications for Wood Fuel East in by the end of this month, so we can get final applications in by the end of January, so we can approve those in February and have offer letters out by March to give everybody at least 6 months' time to procure any equipment or put any installation in that you might want to put in. So that's the urgency. If you want any funding from Wood Fuel East, or if you know anybody who might be interested in funding from Wood Fuel East, you have until the end of this month to get a concept application in, so there's about 3 weeks remaining. There were a few people who have talked to me already today that they might have some ideas. What we can fund is support for woodland owners, woodfield businesses and contractors on anything to do with the woodfield supply chain, from axe extracts in woodlands, which might be funded under the woodfield WIG elsewhere in the country, to stacking areas for curing timber, storage barns for storing logs, for storing wood chip for drying, transport, forwarder trailers for extracting timber out of woodlands, harvester processor units for harvesting trees on various scales, including larger scale and smaller scale equipment for coppice management. And on top of that, we have an increasing number of applications from woodland owners who are looking at self-supply for their own installations under the renewable heat incentive. So we have a quite fair number of those applications. So the applications that are currently being processed largely are woodland owners are either looking to bring logs to market as a final product from their estates, or they're looking at processing timber from their estates for use in biomass boilers on their estates themselves, or they might be looking at improving the infrastructure of their estate to be able to sell logs roundwood into the market. Contractors is anything from extraction equipment, forwarding equipment, firewood processors, chippers, and temporary roading services, one contractor as an example. So it's more or less the entire supply chain, anything from a woodland owner looking at bringing roundwood to market, contractors to harvesting roundwood for woodland owners, to specific woodfield businesses, ESCOs who might be interested in supplying energy to end users, and woodfield supply businesses. I think that's the message. Funding for infrastructure is the same as the woodfield WIG, up to 60% of the cost of infrastructure. For any equipment, it's about 40% intervention rate, so we can provide 40% of the cost of capital equipment. There are our two business development advisors are here. Sid Cooper covers Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex, and Phil Potter covers the western part of the region. We can, since a few months, also fund larger scale equipment, which will normally fit within the DEFRA Reg grant schemes in the East Midlands area. So if there are some projects just across the boundary into the former East Midlands area, we might be able to look at those as well.